I'm Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we are the hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast where we walk listeners through the ins, outs, and retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week. And Rachel, welcome back.
Thank you. It is so awesome to be back in Portland and not in the Denver airport listening to an alarm test for 6 hours.
I just found myself talking to myself about X-Men as I wandered around the apartment, but I think you win.
I kind of do that anyway, though.
No, that's reasonable. Anyway, yeah, so this week it looks like we just have 3 books. Not too bad. You want to dive in? Let's
do it. First up, we've got All New X-Men number 37, written by Brian Michael Bendis, drawn by Mike Del Mundo, and colored by Mike Del Mundo with Marco D'Alfonso. Now, the attentive among you will notice that this is actually coming out 2 weeks after All New X-Men number 38. That is part of the Black Vortex crossover. This isn't. This was running late because of a scheduling issue, and technically takes place before that story, but it's a standalone, so it doesn't actually make a huge difference either way. And this is a great story, speaking of standalones. If you haven't been following this title and you feel like jumping in just for a good one-off story, this is a place I'd recommend. One of the cool things about this book has been watching the sort of nascent student-mentor relationship that's been developing between time-displaced Jean Grey and Emma Frost. And that's what this story is all about.
Yeah, they clashed pretty hard when the characters first met up, when young Jean Grey came from the past. Understandable, given the character's history. So it's been cool seeing that turn around. Really, I think in this book, it's been cool seeing Jean just go on such a drastically different path from her original timeline self.
You mean like having a distinct personality and being written as a legitimate character?
She was later in the main timeline.
She was
just
sometimes
not
in the main
Silver
timeline.
Age.
I think she never really got over that Silver Age lack of characterization with a lot of writers. Like, people would look at that when they were looking for reference and go, oh, she's just really bland. And that's a shame because, again, you know, I really like this character. I really like both these characters, and I really like getting to see them interact. And I really like Mike Del Mundo drawing them.
Yeah. So in this issue, Emma takes Jean to Madripoor basically for a training exercise, turns off her telepathy and says, all right, let's train you differently than the old Jean was trained. And so it focuses on her telekinesis and her fight with the Blob.
And, man, Del Mundo is such a good artist for this because Madripoor is this weird, screwed up kind of criminal state, but it's always struck me as very kind of cacophonous and dreamlike. And Del Mundo has this beautiful sort of painterly style that's stylized. It reminds me almost a little bit of gouache painting that just fits the setting and the story and the characters very, very beautifully because his figures remind me of and are very influenced by sort of old school, traditional, almost maybe mid-century advertising art. Like that kind of stylized figures and faces. And it's a style that fits both characters very, very well.
Yeah, and the art also does a good job of selling the dynamic. There are a lot of good facial expressions as the characters talk and interact with each other, and as Emma Frost boops Jean's nose when she turns off her telepathy, which I thought was great.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think Bendis gets about Emma Frost that is hit and miss with writers is that she is pretty silly. Like, she's a character who's very, very dry, very understated, and has kind of learned to embrace the self-consciously ridiculous within that paradigm. And when she's written well, that's definitely part of it.
And this issue is very much an example of that. Let's move on to Wolverines number 10. This is written by Ray Fox, with art by Jonathan Marks and colors by Lee Loffridge. So yes, we're once again back in our weekly dose of Sure Why Not. And this time it's Fang, who in the last issue took Daken to go fight frost giants, taking Sabretooth to go fight genocidal aliens.
So first of all, I do not think this is actually Fang.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Fang, first of all, Fang's died a ton of times. Second, he's never been a serious character. Third, this character has way too specific an agenda. I mean, he's claiming that these are all the things he was doing with Wolverine, but they're so clearly set up to basically play Ghost of Christmas whatever the hell.
Well, and that's especially the case in this issue, as we see Sabretooth go up against these aliens who used to be like super tortury, murdery, terrible, and now are merely kill everyone still, but do it very peacefully and quickly.
It's an allegory, see?
Yeah, Fang's point is, well, okay, so Sabretooth, Axis inverted you, and now you're better, but you're still killing people. You're just, like, being more polite about it. So, yeah, I mean, that is a little too on the nose, like almost on the nose where you could boop somebody when you take away their telepathy, theoretically.
You know, I think the last issue was too, though. Like, I mean, I wasn't here when you were reviewing that, but I went back and reread it today. And, yeah, the Daken thing was also just really, really, really specific.
Yeah, so we'll see if that continues. I mean, the next issue is Fang and X-23. It almost seems like a rehash of the Weapon X program limited series, where each issue focused on a character. They're kind of doing that again. It doesn't seem redundant, though, because we are getting some interesting character development and analysis, and once again, Fang tells the focal character, Sabretooth in this case, what Wolverine thought of him, which is that Wolverine thought he was basically dull, that he would never really kill him in his annual murder attempts.
Well, or what this character wants Sabretooth to think
Touché.
Wolverine thought of him, because he's been explicit that this is a gambit for revenge.
Yeah.
Like, he told Doc in the last issue that the only one of them Wolverine liked, and the only one he cares about being decent to or helping is X-23. This isn't about making them better people. It's about them making them feel bad about themselves.
Okay, to tangent briefly, I don't know how you're supposed to say Dakin's name. I say Dakin, you say Dakin.
I'm pretty sure it's Dakin. We had there was a discussion of this, like, way long ago when it came up in these, and we both promptly forgot.
Dakin just makes me think of the metal band, which changes everything. But anyway, so as for the issue's quality, I mean, Wolverines remains exactly what it was. It's a sort of, like, out there going in 10 directions at once and 3 plot lines at one story. There's also some stuff with Phantom Mal stealing more stuff, and with Shogun figuring out thinking about who's going to betray him and that sort of thing. But, you know, it's enjoyable. It's some interesting character work. Like, the issues, they're never boring. They're not necessarily good every issue, but they're never boring. This, I think, is one of the stronger issues.
One of the downsides with a weekly series is that it can be pretty uneven, as you mentioned. And to me, this issue and the last one to an extent too have felt more rushed than a lot of the more recent ones have. It's a series that's had a lot of ups and downs. I'm hoping it goes back up, because when it's good, it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we have Spider-Man and the X-Men number 4 of 6. This is written by Elliot Kalin, penciled by R.B. Silva, inked by Rob Lean, and colored by Ian Herring. And it continues to be a lot of fun and exists kind of independent of the rest of the Jean Grey School continuity. This is the book that, to what extent an X-book exists independently of the rest of the line, does that. And I'm still enjoying it a lot. I'm enjoying it a little bit less when the other Jean Grey School faculty comes in, just because Kalen's Rachel Summers is not my Rachel Summers.
To be fair, a lot of people's Rachel Summers right now are not our Rachel Summers. We both cut our teeth on Excalibur, and that was a unique take on the character that I don't think has been replicated very well since then, for the most part.
Well, that was a take on the character that was consistent with the previous several years' take on the character, and she hasn't really been written consistently since that series. And this is one of my less favorite iterations, and that's kind of coloring my read of the whole thing, because she figures pretty heavily into this issue. Otherwise, it's fun. It remains frolicsome. The art remains really strong. And the weird special class hijinks remain pretty splendid. There is a science-off between Spider-Man's kids and Beast's kids, and it's fairly delightful.
I did also like Spider-Man complimenting Shark Girl on her improving banter, because if Spider-Man's going to teach you anything, it's probably swinging around, having a terrible life, and banter. And all of those are somewhat important to the X-Men.
I like Shark Girl so much. I hope she sticks around as a character, because she's wonderful.
Well, she's been around for a few years at this point, so she probably will.
I want her to be one of those breakthrough characters who just sort of stays, like a bunch of the Morrison kids did.
Shark Girl and the X-Men for 2016. It's going to be great, guys.
Okay, so Miles, we're done with the reviews. What's our pick of the week?
So I'm going to have to say this time it is All New X-Men, number 37. I feel kind of bad picking so many Bendis books for our picks of the week, but the fact is he's writing so much of the line at this point that he kind of has an unfair advantage, and he does write a damn good X-Men story. This issue has some great characterization, especially for Emma Frost, who we don't get into her head nearly as much as I would like. Some novel and interesting art that I really enjoyed, and it's also a good standalone story, and as somebody who's always trying to get people into the X-Men, those are something that I really value. What about our panel of the week, Rachel?
Well, our panel of the week is also from All New X-Men number 37, but it's much more about showcasing artist Mike Del Mundo's work. This is actually a pair of panels from the last page of the issue. Don't worry, no spoilers. And in addition to being a very good, bit of interesting, artistic representation of conversation, the Wollywood 22 panels, it uses a trick that Del Mundo uses throughout this issue, and that I'm actually not sure I've ever seen a comics artist do before. I'm sure one has, because it seems like such an obvious one, but it so rarely actually turns up, and that is using depth of focus.
Yeah.
Like, if you see in the first panel just having basically a short focal length, you hardly ever see that. You see it on covers, but you almost never see it used as a storytelling tool. And Del Mundo does it throughout this issue, and he does it beautifully. And, I mentioned the Wollywood 22 panels. This is a reference that a lot of artists and writers go to, basically for interesting ways to frame what's basically a talking heads scene. And that's not something that's in it. That's not something that's generally really treated as part of the standard comics artist toolset. So it's really cool seeing someone use it so well here.
That's it for this time. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy what you've seen here, please check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up every Sunday at rachelandmiles.com, iTunes, and Stitcher. And Oh man, you guys, I am so excited about this week's episode. It is one of our favorite stories.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Marvel's Thor. Obviously, we're both big fans of Marvel's X-Men, and this is kind of the best of both worlds, although Thor doesn't actually show up, but that's beside the point. The New Mutants and the X-Men go to Asgard. We see various of the 9 realms as, like, Cannonball hangs out with dwarves and stuff. We see a lot of the Warriors 3, including my buddy Volstagg. Storm becomes, like, a fake thunder goddess. It's great.
It's got the first technical appearance of Longshot in an X-book, doesn't it?
Yes, it sort of does, even if it's basically just an Easter egg. But yeah, good stuff, a lot of fun. You should check it out.
Speaking of the podcast, thank you again so much to Elizabeth Alley for filling in for me on episode 47 when I was still out of town.
And thank you to our Patreon supporters, because you guys make our podcast, these videos, all the X-Men stuff we do possible. We love you very much. If you would like to become a Patreon supporter and you're not, there's a link down there on YouTube and up there on our website. We'd love it if you signed up.
See you next week.
I have no
What
idea.
the hell, Denver?